Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. A South Australian family was reportedly left shaken, though thankfully unharmed this week, after they were awoken by strange sounds in the middle of the night, only to discover that a stranger who was running from police had climbed onto their roof. The whole thing began sometime around 2 a.m. on June 10th, when police received a call about a burglary in progress at a BP gas station in the Adelaide suburb of Elizabeth. Managers at the business had contacted police after getting alerts from the store's security system. Using their phones, they had checked the surveillance cameras, where they had spotted an unknown man who had broken in through the building's roof. Police responded to the scene minutes later, though by that time the suspect had already fled. Around that same time, a woman named Kylie Laverty was in her bed with her husband just over a mile away, when suddenly they were awoken by strange noises coming from outside. First, they heard what sounded like their garbage bins moving, followed by a loud banging on their side fence. Finally, the noises moved to their roof. It turned out that after fleeing the gas station crime scene, the same male suspect had run into Kylie's neighborhood, climbing onto her and her family's roof in a bid to hide from police. However, the man was ultimately unsuccessful, as just a short time later authorities were able to use a police canine to follow the suspect's trail. Officers surrounded the house, leading to a brief standoff before the man eventually agreed to climb down and was placed under arrest. He apparently used a trailer that Kylie and her husband had left parked close to their house to make his way up there. Understandably, the situation was quite unnerving for the Laverty family, though Kylie did say in an interview with local media she was thankful that her 5-year-old daughter slept through the whole thing. She also had some choice words for the suspect, stating, quote, "People just need to get a job and just grow up and stop it. This is people's lives that you're messing with." At the time of this recording, the suspect's name has not been released and has been identified only as a 22-year-old man. He is expected to face multiple charges in connection with the two incidents. Representatives from England's Thames Valley Police are asking for the public's help this week as they seek to identify a suspect after a children's playground was vandalized for the second time in less than a month in the same deeply unsettling way. The situation began back on May 13th, when 39-year-old Verity Smith took her 3-year-old daughter Emily for what was supposed to be a day of fun at the local village playground in Marcham, in the county of Oxfordshire. However, shortly after arriving at the park, things took a disturbing turn. It all started when Emily came running over to her mom to tell her that she had found something strange over on the seesaw. Verity went to check it out, where she discovered that upturned nails had been glued to both seats on the seesaw. At first, the 39-year-old apparently didn't think much of this. She simply removed both nails, then suggested that they go and play on the swings instead. She was just about to lower Emily into one of the seats there when she found another nail that had been glued in the exact same way. That's when she started to realize that something really messed up was going on. Sure enough, when Verity began checking the rest of the playground, she discovered more nails. In fact, they had been glued to every single piece of play equipment at the park. After police were alerted about the situation, they began an investigation and removed the remaining nails from the park. The refurbished play area was reopened, though just as locals had started to put the incident behind them, a second disturbing announcement was made. On the morning of June 3rd, exactly 3 weeks after the initial incident, more nails were reportedly found glued to the cradle seat swings at the playground, with officials announcing they would have to close the park again. While police say that they are still looking for the person responsible, they have now released CCTV images of a masked man who they believe could be the perpetrator. This man was caught on surveillance in the area around 12:30 a.m. on June 3rd, just hours before the second set of nails was discovered. At the time of this recording, authorities are asking for anyone who might recognize this man to please come forward with any information they might have. The situation is still developing. Authorities in the Indian capital of New Delhi say that a woman was recently arrested in connection with a terrifying crime after she allegedly attempted to carry out a violent and brazen daylight home invasion targeting her wealthy neighbor. The whole thing began at around 11 a.m. on May 23rd, when the victim, Chandra Kanta, received a knock at her front door. When she opened up, she was greeted by a woman dressed in a delivery worker's uniform who said that she had something that she needed to sign for. The worker claimed they didn't have a pen and asked Chandra if she didn't mind going in to get one. Chandra apparently agreed, though only moments later things took a horrifying turn. Without her realizing, the other woman had followed her inside and began to beat her in the head with a replica pistol. Chandra screamed for help and fortunately was able to get the attention of other people in the area who came running to see what was going on. Realizing this, the female attacker ran off. When police launched an investigation, things got even more disturbing. In a vacant house nearby, they found the disguise the attacker had been wearing, along with a bag containing the replica handgun, gloves, and 2 ropes. Though the culprit had managed to escape the scene after the attack and was wearing a helmet and face covering in order to avoid being identified. Thanks to CCTV footage and other undisclosed evidence, police were allegedly able to identify her. The woman is said to be a 38-year-old who also lives in the area, whose name is Rekha. She was tracked down and arrested the following day. During a subsequent confession, Rekha reportedly told police that she was struggling to pay her rent and other household expenses because she had lost her job and was unemployed. She knew that Chandra had a lot of money and jewelry, and that she was also home alone during the day, so she had planned to rob her. After the botched crime, she apparently changed her clothes and came back to the scene to make it look like she was just another concerned neighbor, as well as to avoid suspicion. Despite the detailed confession, police say they don't believe that Rekha merely intended to rob Chandra. Based on the vicious nature of the attack and the ropes she brought, they have argued that she likely planned to kill her as well. At the time of this recording, Rekha remains in custody and is soon expected to face a number of charges. Authorities in Japan's Shiga Prefecture say that a 35-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder just over 2 weeks after he allegedly stabbed his volunteer probation officer to death inside the man's own home. The case began on the afternoon of May 26th when the victim, Hiroshi Shinjo, was found dead inside his residence in the city of Otsu. The 60-year-old had sustained at least 10 knife wounds to his upper body, with an autopsy concluding that he had likely been killed at least a couple of days before. This was confirmed after police launched an investigation, revealing that Hiroshi had last been seen alive on the evening of May 24th. Surveillance footage taken from his home intercom showed that he had returned around 6:30 p.m. after finishing work that day at the local restaurant he owned. That wasn't all, though. More footage from the intercom, as well as surveillance video from other homes in the surrounding area, showed that the 60-year-old had gotten a visitor not long after. That man had entered through the front door before leaving less than half an hour later. After doing some further digging into Hiroshi's life, police reportedly learned that he was a volunteer probation officer. So, unlike in many countries, Japan's probation system relies a lot on community support, specifically from volunteer probation officers. These are members of the local community who work with recovering offenders and take care of everything from supervision to coordinating housing and employment to help these people reintegrate back into society. While volunteer probation officers are not paid, they are considered part-time national government officials. They also make up the vast majority of the probation officers in the country. According to a couple of sources we came across, there are nearly 50,000 active volunteer probation officers in Japan, compared to the roughly 800 officers who are actually in paid positions. Anyway, after finding out that Hiroshi had been a volunteer probation officer for many years, authorities also learned that one of the people he had been working with was a 35-year-old man named Kohei Itsuka. Itsuka was sentenced to 3 years in prison in June of 2019 after he robbed a local convenience store and pointed a knife at the clerk who was working there. The sentence had been suspended for 5 years with probation, which is how the two had met. As part of his rehabilitation, Itsuka had been required to show up for regular meetings with Hiroshi. It turned out that one of these meetings had been scheduled for the exact time when the murder took place, with the 35-year-old allegedly matching the appearance of the man seen in the previously mentioned surveillance video. It's now believed that Itsuka killed Hiroshi sometime during this scheduled meeting. On May 28th, Itsuka was arrested after being found in possession of a knife somewhere in Otsu. He was rearrested on June 8th on suspicion of stabbing Hiroshi to death. While no official motive has been released behind the killing at this time, police have revealed that they found a number of concerning social media posts allegedly made by the 35-year-old suspect in the lead-up to the killing. In the posts, Itsuka reportedly expressed his frustration and anger with his probation. The awful situation has reportedly led to a lot of fears for the safety of volunteer probation officers as a whole. Japan's justice ministries say that they are currently doing a nationwide review of all open cases in an attempt to identify any other potentially dangerous situations. However, they also pointed out that this was the first time a crime like this had happened in the country since 1964. At the time of this recording, the situation is still under investigation. Representatives from Spain's national police say that a 26-year-old German tourist has been arrested this week, following an idiotic incident in which he allegedly tried to steal an expensive piece of construction equipment while drunk, only to crash it moments later, injuring himself and seriously damaging the vehicle in the process. The whole thing began sometime on June 9th, when police received calls from the owner of a local quarry on the island of Majorca. The owner explained that they had just been contacted by some of their neighbors who stated that a young German man had come to them suffering from injuries and claiming that he had been messing around down at the active dig site. The owner had gone to check the situation out, where they found their 25-ton wheel loader overturned at the side of one of the quarry roads and partially hanging over into a ravine. When officers arrived at the scene, they were able to speak to the 26-year-old German suspect, who was in the country on vacation. He was apparently drunk, covered in blood from injuries he had sustained, and admitted to sneaking into the quarry. According to police, after climbing the perimeter fence at the site, the man found the keys to the wheel loader and allegedly attempted to drive off with it. However, in his intoxicated state, he had made it less than 80 yards before getting into an accident and flipping the piece of heavy machinery on its side. While the 26-year-old was quickly treated for his injuries, the situation with the wheel loader wasn't so straightforward. The crash apparently did major damage to the vehicle and caused engine oil to leak out all over the road. The owner of the wheel loader went as far as to claim in local news reports that the thing had been entirely destroyed, and that they would likely have to buy a new one due to a lack of available spare parts. The wheel loader is reportedly valued at between 300 and 350,000 euros, or about $325,000 to $380,000 US. As for the German tourist, he has now been arrested on property damage crimes and reportedly remains in custody. Authorities in the Thai capital of Bangkok say that they arrested a suspected drug dealer with a rather bizarre and flawed MO this week, after she was apparently found to be using mute couriers to distribute her illegal products, believing that they wouldn't be able to identify her if they were caught. According to reports, the whole thing started sometime last month, when police in Bangkok's Yanawa district were tipped off about a local drug gang. Witnesses said that the group was pretty unique and identifiable for one specific reason. All of the couriers, the street-level people who actually sold and delivered the drugs, were deaf and mute, meaning they were unable to speak. The alleged leader of the group was a 53-year-old woman named Payun. For some reason, Payun apparently believed that by hiring mute couriers, she was protecting herself, reasoning that if any of them were caught, they wouldn't be able to pass along information about her to police. Of course, as you may have already noticed, there was an obvious flaw in her logic. After launching an investigation, officers from the Investigation Division of the Metropolitan Bureau organized an undercover drug buy from one of Payun's couriers, a man identified as Patarsan. After Patarsan allegedly sold meth to an officer, he was arrested, at which point he was taken in for questioning. He almost immediately pointed authorities in Payun's direction. You see, while Patarsan may have been mute, he wasn't illiterate. He just wrote down the information for police instead of saying it to them. Payun was arrested last week on June 6th. It's unclear why Payun thought that mute people just couldn't communicate at all. In fact, what makes the case even stranger is that apparently she's hard of hearing herself. So, You think she would kind of have a tiny bit of insight into her courier's disabilities, to say the very least. Anyway, Payun now claims that she isn't the mastermind behind the drug scheme, and that there are two much more powerful people who actually supply the drugs and forced her and others to sell them. However, so far she has reportedly refused to give up these names, citing fears for her safety. Police say that they are now investigating this new lead, but in the meantime, Payun remains in custody. Authorities in the Vietnamese capital of Hanoi say that a former South Korean professional gamer was recently arrested on murder charges after he allegedly killed a woman who he had been sharing a hotel room with when she refused his romantic advances. The whole thing began at around 1 p.m. on May 30th, when the 24-year-old suspect, Lee Chang-ju, checked into a hotel with the victim, who has been identified only as a woman in her 30s with the initial A. Sometime after the pair went up to their room, Lee allegedly made advances towards A, and when she said she wasn't interested, Lee flew into a rage. He allegedly strangled the woman before placing a pillow over her face until she stopped breathing. Once A was dead, Lee reportedly left the hotel room completely naked and started making his way to the building's roof. It's believed that he was intending to jump. However, before he could make it to the 65th floor, he was caught by security guards in the elevator. They called police after realizing A was dead, and the 24-year-old was arrested on suspicion of murder. When news of the disturbing incident was reported, many people quickly realized that they knew Lee by a different name. The South Korean national was a former professional gamer who had competed under the name Yaharong in the popular multiplayer online battle arena game League of Legends. According to reports, Lee's career had started off very promisingly. He had first become known in the professional scene in 2016, and by 2018 had joined a team called Jin Air Green Wings, which competed in Korea's top League of Legends division known as LCK. Unfortunately for Lee, things began to nosedive in 2019. That year, he and his team reportedly went on one of the biggest losing streaks in the video game's competitive history, finishing with 1 win and 35 losses. Apparently, the 24-year-old tried to make a couple more moves in the years that followed, to moderate success, though as of the end of 2022, was considered to be retired as a pro player. At the time of this recording, Lee remains in custody in Vietnam. However, it's believed that he will soon be extradited back to South Korea to stand trial for murder. Representatives from both the United States and the Chinese Foreign Ministry say that several people have been hospitalized this week following a terrifying stabbing attack at a Chinese public park, the victims of which were predominantly U.S. citizens who were taking part in an exchange trip. The incident began shortly before noon on June 10th, when police in the Chinese city of Jilin were called to Beishan Park with reports that multiple people had been injured. They arrived to find 5 victims, all of whom were suffering from stab wounds. Thankfully, none of their wounds were life-threatening. However, all of the victims were quickly taken to a local hospital for treatment. In the meantime, the alleged perpetrator, a 55-year-old man identified only by the last name Kui, was taken into custody. At the time, he was apparently in possession of the knife that he allegedly used to carry out the attack. At the time of this recording, most of the victims of the disturbing daylight attack have not been identified by name. The exception is a man named David Zabner, a Tufts University doctoral student whose brother Adam confirmed that he was among the injured during subsequent media interviews. According to Adam, David was part of a group of U.S. university tutors who had traveled to China as part of a teaching program. The program is reportedly a partnership between Iowa's Cornell College and China's Beihua University, and provides money for Cornell professors to live in China and help to teach a course over a 2-week period. The courses apparently focus on computer science, math, and physics, and David had participated in the same exchange the year before. At the time of the attack, David and his fellow tutors were supposed to be on a day trip to Beishan Park, specifically to check out some of the temples there. While it's unclear exactly how the violent incident began, the latest reports state that the suspect, Kui, quote, collided with a foreign national while walking in Beishan Park. He then stabbed this foreign national and 3 other accompanying foreign nationals, as well as a Chinese tourist who attempted to stop his attack. In addition to David, 2 of the other victims were U.S. citizens, while the other member of their group was a U.S. resident who lived in Iowa. Nothing else has been released about the Chinese citizen who tried to stop the attack. Unfortunately, very little information is available on the whole about the incident, as it appears the Chinese government has made attempts to censor much of the domestic reporting about the crime. The day after the incident, search engines were returning no results on China's internet, despite the fact that the attack was a trending topic on Chinese social media platform Weibo. As a result, nothing regarding a possible motive has been confirmed, with reports simply stating that police are still looking into whether the attack was targeted or random. Thankfully, though, it appears that all of the victims are recovering well. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.